A judge in New York has just allowed the police to violate the law and hold people longer than the 24-hour period that the law mandates um, during the protests. Now, as we know, there have been protests that erupted in all 50 states, not just 50 states, all across the world, with some of them, some area spots turning violent per se, but for the most part, the overwhelming majority of the protests were peaceful, beautiful, collective organization of people coming together to push back against a police state. And not just a police state, I would even argue some of those people are out there for broader economic concerns. But the inciting event was the murder, the brutal, vicious, sadistic murder of one George Floyd. With all of the protests that's been rocking across the United States, New York has been one of the places that have been hit with protests pretty severely. Now, understand, it is New York. New York has its own issue with police violence. They have to stop and frisk, where they were basically locking up any colored person that they could find that they could stop. But on top of that, violence is endemic in regards to the way the police run their affairs in New York. It's one of those things that's just kind of understood about New York cops. A judge in New York, because the cops have been locking up protesters in New York, the cops have not been processing those people in the 24 hours that they were supposed to process those people. So when a petition was filed for immediate release of the 150 Black Lives Matter protesters, and again, not all of these people were quote unquote rioters or however they want to categorize them. Many of these people were just peaceful, innocent protesters who was out there, First Amendment rights, petitioning for their grievances. And the judge basically said no. Now, the reason that the judge gives is extraordinary. So I'll just read it. This is from national correspondent for Fox News Channel. So New York City judge, or New York State Judge James Burke, ruled that New York Police Department can now keep anyone, peaceful protesters, arrested for curfew and criminal looters, meaning doesn't matter. If you were just a peaceful protester a minute beyond curfew and the cop got you as you were on your way home from work, too bad. The cops were pulling people out of their cars, by the way, that were at stoplights. Or for that matter, they were just getting people who were walking home, and in some of those cases, abusing those people. Meaning they were being indiscriminate in the people who they were going after. So regarding the people who were locked up, they might have gotten a rioter here or there, but let's just be very clear that some of these people are going to be completely innocent. And the judge has basically said, yes, the cops can now keep those people for longer than 24 hours. His excuse, it's a crisis within a crisis. These are extraordinary times. All writs are denied. That's astonishing. That's astonishing. Let me see, Bronx, Manhattan, and Brooklyn. No, Bronx, Manhattan, and Brooklyn. I think that's Brooklyn. New York Police Department argued that for the need for extreme measures to maintain order, the majority were burglary and looting. These are unprecedented times. There is a rage against the police department. These people have been throwing bricks at police officers and slashing police officers. New York Police Department admitted that because the volume of arrests, social distancing has not always been enforced, but they've been given soap and masks. I won't call them protesters, I'll call them rioters. Because you have to call them rioters, right? If you're going to make your argument about why you have to keep people in prison, and keep in mind, they're not giving these people legal assistance or legal aid. The cop is just out here telling you who these people are. I could show you video after video after video of cops beating people, abusing people, dragging them out of their cars, attacking civilians. Some people, they were taking their bicycles saying, you're after curfew, buddy, slashing tires, breaking windows. The cops! If you're looking for the violence, it's with the cops. And now these cops who've been out there visiting all sorts of violence and all sorts of hell on these protesters are now saying we have to keep them in jail longer than the 24 hours because we can't process everything that needs to be processed. And so, we're sorry that we can't give them legal assistance and legal aid within the 24-hour period. That is the law. Sorry. And the judge accepts the excuse. The judge accepts the excuse. So right here, legal aid argued that per New York law, people cannot be detained without seeing a judge for over 24 hours, and that these people are mainly protesters against police brutality. I hope you understand what's taking place here. The law says you have to be able to get some level of legal assistance, meaning you got to see a judge within 24 hours. The cops are saying, look, we don't have the ability to ensure that we can follow the law and get these people to see a judge within an allotted time period. And so we need to be able to keep people for as long as we need to keep people as we move this process along. This is a time for extraordinary measures. This is what we need to do. Now, legal aid is basically making a point that no, the cops could get these people through if they wanted to. They just want to punish these people because they are protesting police brutality. Judge Burke ruled, therefore, I find it's necessary because we're in a crisis caused by the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, which prevents live arraignments, which in turn requires virtual arraignments, which causes delay. Burke also went back on his ruling, saying it's simply a fact that virtual parts slow down arraignment, including, but not limited, because of technical issues and certainly because of increased volume. We're talking about innocent people. Donald Trump was able to pull in military, National Guard. He was able to find people from all over the place in order to beat up and injure protesters. But you're making the argument to me that New York State doesn't have the capability or the manpower to ensure that all of these people are processed in an orderly time frame where they can see a judge within a 24-hour period that's provided by law. That's provided by law. And just to make this point that much more plain, this is what the cops have been doing. And I'm showing you this because I want to make it that much more clear that many of these people are just innocent and that the people who are doing the violence are the cops themselves. You can't believe what they are saying here. This cameraman was just standing there. He wasn't doing anything to anybody. He was just standing there. Here's another one. Oh, look at that good old cop just spraying protesters, spraying them down. Just spraying them down. Yep, that's how you do it. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. That's how you do the job. This is one of my favorites. The cops are shooting this person as they try to get him medical assistance. Here's another one. This is a guy who has a pregnant wife in the car that the cops are basically oiling down with rubber bullets. Here's another one where this person is just on his bike trying to leave. Yeah, you're not going anywhere. And now we have the other people who are going to help basically beat the guy with clubs because that's how you do it. That's how you do justice. That's called justice. That's the New York Police Department right there, buddy. Here's more. Militarized police force. This is what's been taking place across the United States. I want to make this very clear. Many of these people are not violent protesters in the way that the New York Police Department is trying to say. Many of these people were just out there protesting the brutality of the police. And the police response to that was just to visit more brutality on those people who were protesting that brutality in the first place. All across the United States. Look at this. Here are the cops. I can show you video where these guys are hitting people with cars, with horses. In this case, here's a cameraman. I think I showed you that one already. Look, my very basic point is that this is what has been taking place. I mean, on the bridge the other night, look at this. The cops are lobbing tear gas in this area, basically creating a stampede. Some of the people fell off the side of the edge and everything else based on the stampede of them just dropping tear gas in the middle of a crowd like this. And here's one that took place today, apparently.
Get on the ground. Yes, sir. Hit her.
That's how you do it. That's how you do it. Day at the office. Day at the office. I can dispense the maximum amount of force for any infraction. Doesn't matter what the infraction is. I want to grope you and you don't like me groping you. That's enough for me to either tase you, beat you, hit you on my baton. And I even have my other officers that are going to be here with me to say that, well, he did try to grope her and she didn't allow him. And so, she was resisting arrest. Here are your cops. And with these cops, these are the guys, these are the things that these guys are doing. These are the people who are basically arguing that we can't process these people in time. Don't take their word for this. The majority of these people are peaceful protesters. And the cops asking for this kind of extra constitutional ability, at the very least under New York law, to basically hold people longer should not in any way be allowed. The COVID-19 is a fig leaf. They just want to punish these people for protesting police brutality. I'll leave it here. I don't want this to keep one long, but it should be pointed out. They have been violent like nobody's business, sadistically violent, and that shit needs to be called out. Donald Trump has basically declared war on the American public and have given these guys a license to go hog wild, beating the population. I showed you in that other clip, 99% of the killings by police from 2013 to 2019 have gone without any charges, no crimes. Now, you tell me, do you believe that 99% of the killings, the maximum dispensation of force, was correct? Meaning, for this number to not be amoral or immoral or just an outrage, all of these killings that have taken place between 2013 to 2019, 99% would have had to have been clean shoots, fair game. The cop acted exactly the way the cop was supposed to act. Now, there's no way you believe that. That means that basically this just means there's no accountability for killings or murder. So when we see Trump release the hounds and we see them dropping grenades or shooting people in the arm or shooting people in the eye or just beating them relentlessly a minute after curfew, you're fair game now, buddy. Don't necessarily take their word for it when they say all of these people are rioters and whatnot. No, many of those people are just protesters, and they just want to punish those people for being out there protesting. Dilly out 357, have you talked about Mr. I support NYPD de Blasio's daughter getting arrested during the protests? No, I didn't. They doxed her. So de Blasio's daughter was protesting. And while she was out there protesting, apparently she was arrested. And the cops, some kind of, some organization, doxed her. They put her information out saying that we got her daughter, we got de Blasio's daughter and all this other stuff. De Blasio looked like a hostage when he's been making those videos. His police department has been utterly abysmal in the way that they've been treating protesters. And yet, he's terrified to say anything about it, including hitting protesters with their police cars. So, he looked like he's terrified. I suppose the cops are around him all the time and accidents can happen. But in this case, no, I didn't do the story. They doxed his daughter. Like, share, and subscribe. Police are maniacs. Something needs to change in our system. This is not just for blacks. This is for all of us. We have a policed state. 5% of the world's population with 25% of the world's population in our prisons. Meaning from the standpoint of a prison system around the world, we have an exorbitant amount of people in our prisons. We put people in prisons for the tiniest of infractions. Go look abroad and see what they do abroad from the standpoint of their prison system. But also understand that this is an economic issue too, that incentivizes the police system in the way that the police system operates. Democrats and Republicans are basically just throwing cops at problems that they have neither the intelligence, the skill, or the station to solve. And then they're shocked to shit when these guys are either committing suicide at high rates or beating the shit out of the population, meaning violence turned inward or violence turned outward, as they have no capacity to deal with what they're dealing with. Not to mention some are violently racist, and you give these guys a huge amount of authority without having any accountability in the process. Your system is fundamentally broken. The George Floyd murder was just one of 1,000 murders or killings that had taken place last year alone. And again, I showed you the stat with accountability. Now, if you have a system that have no accountability associated with it, what do you think you're going to get in that system? Think of your political system for the moment. You have Democratic Party, where people basically say blue no matter who, meaning all accountability to hold your political leaders accountable out the door. And then you're shocked as shit When you look at Pelosi and the Democrats in Congress and you're like, God, why are these people so less than worthless? That's why. You haven't voted for people to do an affirmative thing. You voted for people just to keep the monsters at bay. And because you're just keeping the monsters at bay, that vote doesn't have anything to do with the individual, short of that person just being least worse in your mind than the other person. But the things that you want to get done in the political space, the things that will tangibly and materially benefit our society and the people of that particular society en masse, we can't get those things because we continue to put people in office, again, not for the affirmative case of what they're going to do, but entirely for who they are not. Until that changes, until we start actually agitating, meaning whatever we want to think of these protests, it's righteous indignation from what has been taking place economically, but also from the standpoint of the way cops and our criminal justice system operates. Whatever we want to think of the disproportionate nature of this being towards African Americans, understand this is also aimed and targeted at class issues of whites. Yes, we may be disproportionate, but the people who are being killed predominantly are white. The people who make up the prison system are on welfare. The majority are white. We have certain perspectives of that stuff that people don't necessarily entirely think about, but we only make up 13% of the population. My point is, this is not just a black issue. This is a criminal justice issue in the way the cops engage with the community in general. Yes, they may have a certain degree of a gradient in regards to how they engage with whites that may be better. But let's just be very clear, they would murder, tase, beat, and attack you every much as they would anyone else. And in this particular case, we have these militarized cops. We have cops who are hiding their badges. We have other people who are in DC right now who are unaccountable and unidentifiable. And because they're not technically cops, they don't necessarily have to tell you who they are as they go beat, injure, and basically attack innocent protesters. Our system needs to change. And this is an opportunity for that to take place. My sympathies are for basically the people who are being injured, who have been injured, and who have had no level of accountability in our process. And all of that heat, all of that anger, all of that rage is basically bubbled up, ignited by this very specific moment with George Floyd and having, 40 million people out of a job, meaning you have all sorts of tinder for those people to set shit on fire. Like, share,